call our work session to order. Kimberly, can you take roll, please?
President Bill Bismet.
Here.
Vice President Carrie Nicholson. Here. Secretary Lisa Middleton. Here. Treasurer Larry Williams.
Here.
Trustee Brent Dawson. Trustee Shauna Gamble. Here. Trustee Richard Lindsay.
Here.
Okay, we will observe our customary moment of silence. Richard, could you lead us in the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, may I entertain a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, members of the audience may address the board on agenda items only. Seeing none, we'll move on to consent agenda, personnel and other. How do you want to give us any background on these, Randy?
Yeah, I think I do. It didn't write up too much of a background on our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, but I wanted to give you a heads up on that as well. It does give you background on our Marshall Middle School Assistant Principal position. An analysis of candidates following the interview was concluded. It was all internal, posted. We had 5 of our internal teacher leaders that had submitted their applications, and we're very proud to know that we've interviewed 5 that were all credentialed as Ed Leadership Master's degree for credentialed for becoming an administrator. Most of them already had their administrative cert or were working on that, so we're very pleased with that. Also, we'll be talking about our Director of Curriculum and Instruction. That was an external search. We had 2 very strong candidates. We had 5 more that submitted. Some of them didn't quite meet the criteria that we were looking for in regards to K-12. If I could have split it up and had a curriculum director for lower L and or for elementary and one for secondary, that would have been the best of all worlds. Didn't, but thankfully we had 2 candidates that were very strong external to be considered. So those interviews went well too. Just wanted to give you that background.
Okay. Can I entertain a motion, please?
Move.
Okay, discussion. I know you're going to talk more about the new hires under your report of the superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
Questions, comments?
Congratulations, and I'm looking forward to everything that's going to be happening this year.
Congrats. Start with Richard.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay, now we'll move on to report of the superintendent, special recognition, new hires.
And speaking of new hires, Stacy Austin fills the position of assistant cook at Marshall Middle School. Miss Austin is a graduate of Teconcha High School. Ann Branham fills the position of elementary teacher at Harrington Elementary. Ms. Branham attended Miller College, where she earned a bachelor's degree with a major in elementary education, which was exciting because I was on the advisory board with the educational department there for the first 6 years of their operation. So it's nice to see someone come out and come over and work with us. Catherine Connors fills the position of language arts and history teacher at Marshall Middle School. Ms. Connors attended Central Michigan University, where she earned a bachelor's degree with a double major in English and history. Chad Holt joins the administrative team as Director of Curriculum and Instruction for the district. Mr. Holt graduated from Coldwater High School before heading to West Virginia University, where he earned his bachelor's in teacher ed. During his first teaching job at Duval County Schools, Chad earned his master's degree from the University of North Florida in educational leadership. He became a principal at the Kanawha County Schools and then recruited as a school improvement coordinator for the West Virginia Department of Education. Mr. Holt was then placed in the Kanawha County Schools as the transformation specialist before answering the call to become the new principal superintendent for Marlee Schools in July of 2012, where he has remained since returning to Michigan. A couple things with Chad, I just wanted to underline. Kanawha County Schools is, I believe, 130,000 students. In West Virginia, they're very large districts and multiple buildings, and that's why he was put into that position from their Department of Education. I also want to mention it's very impressive that Chad has been principal / superintendent for Marley School for 7 years and left them in really good standing. Their fund balance is strong, their academics are strong, their numbers continue to remain. So we're real pleased to have him come on board.
You've been there just last year. Time goes way too fast.
7 years, 7 years. Matt Siebert. Matt's in the audience today, dressed impeccably in a suit and tie. Matt Siebert joins the administrative team as Marshall Middle School's assistant principal. Mr. Siebert is a graduate of Marshall High School and attended Olivet College, where he earned a BA in integrated science with a secondary certification. He was hired by the district as a high school science teacher, joining the staff at Marshall High School in November of 2013. He recently completed his master's from Western Michigan University in K-12 principal leadership this past April. He also did his internship with us during that time. Mr. Siebert has contributed greatly to our high school varsity football program and many other extracurricular activities with students over the past years. As I said, Matt was one of 5 very strong candidates reviewed, and we're very pleased with the selection process, and the middle school is ecstatic to have Matt. Matt, who do you have with you?
This is my wife, Tanya.
Hi, Tanya, how are you? Congratulations and welcome on board. Denise Paty fills the position of special education teacher at Marshall Middle School. Ms. Paty attended the University of Colorado, where she earned a bachelor's degree in sociology and a master's degree in special education. That concludes our new hires for so far. There's a few more to go.
Few more openings. Congratulations again.
Welcome on board, Matt.
Gonna miss you at football.
I know their high school kids are gonna miss you up there too, but. Okay, move on to upcoming events. Kids Day at the Fair.
Kids Day at the Fair is tomorrow, August 13th, and true to form, usually it's going to be rainy and muddy. Kimberly and I will be there at 6:30 sharp, making sure we have a table and get that all set up. And I see that Richard, Brad, and Matt are going to be there at 9 to 10:30. 10:30 to noon will be Bill, Becky, and Dave. And noon to 1:30 will be Brent, Tara, and I'll be coming over to pick things up and close down the shop. Very pleased about the turnout for that. And if you haven't seen our little giveaways, Kimberly outdid herself this year. We have beach balls that have our logo on it for Marshall Public Schools. So we're really excited about that for kids. We're not blowing them all up before we give them out, so you don't have to worry about that.
Okay, any questions on that?
Come by.
Next is Welcome Back Community Breakfast, August 19th.
Yes, it is August 19th at 7:30 in the Marshall High School cafeteria. Breakfast is served buffet style in the cafeteria from 7:30 to 8:10, with the program beginning promptly at 8:15 in the auditorium. I think Kimberly put promptly there for my benefit. District administration and the Marshall Teachers Association have collaborated in planning this event to celebrate the beginning of the 2019-2020 school year and welcome new staff of Marshall Public Schools to the community. Several awards will be presented at the breakfast to recognize outstanding individuals for their contributions to the district. It's that time of year again.
Any questions? Move on to board topics. A, facility needs assessment update.
In your last board packet, you had this handout from Kingscott that talked about the timelines the process and timeline that we go through. In considering, just considering if we're going for a bond initiative coming up. I want you to know that he met David had his team over here last week doing facilities needs assessments in all of our facilities in Albion. We're building off the needs assessment last completed in all of our facilities here in Marshall back in the 2010, and we're updating those. But primarily, this team has not seen the Albion facilities yet, so they went over and did a really good combing through where the facilities sit currently. Tomorrow is on the agenda for David to come in and do an OAC meeting on the safety project that we have going on, school safety project. But also he's going to be meeting with each building principal throughout the day on hour intervals to get their feedback about not only what the last needs assessment said, but any changes, either enhancements or challenges that they've been having with their facilities at that point. He'll be taking notes with that, along with their needs assessment from the team, and he'll be compiling an update on the original assessments all the way across the boards, which will be the next following week, and then the Board of Education presentation, which will be on the 26th of August. Is that the next board session? Yes, 26th of August. And that will be then a compiled report that he'll leave with us for consideration. Next steps that go on with the facilities needs assessment: identifying deficiencies, recommending corrections, educational assessments, which will be key tomorrow in the discussions with our principal team, our building principals. Develop estimates, start to prioritize results, facility committee reviews, and then comprehensive needs assessment report, which will be understanding of existing facilities and educational conditions, maintenance plan, technology plan, demographic data, and Becky's been working on that in regards to projections for enrollment and any outstanding challenges we may have to that. Okay? When that gets done, we're going to start in the process in September of creating a shared vision. That process also includes creating an input group for feedback and starting to get community members more involved in this process and dialogue. It'll also be reviewing and confirming priorities from the needs assessment, present results to the community, and that's an ongoing process. Shared vision to the future, including prioritizing our list of facilities needs and wants, curricular and educational direction, technology direction, and capacity information. That's really getting all the facts in order. And then when we go into identifying the right project, that takes a lot of feedback, and that will be ongoing really November, December. We're scheduled to be at Treasury. If we bring this forward, we're scheduled to be at Treasury January 10th. Is that correct?
Hold on.
They have to approve all our funding matrix, everything else in regards to the project and so forth. January 13th. Which gives us a little bit of breathing room for a week longer or 2 weeks longer than we expected we'd have to. So we think the timeline is decent enough to get to Treasury and get that approved. After that, it's all hands on deck, getting information out and making sure that the facts are presented to anybody and everybody that's a taxpayer in our larger district, and making sure they understand the funding structure behind it.
So when it goes to Treasury, are they just making sure everything's in line, or can they suggest changes, or?
They can suggest changes, so Treasury, they'll take our proposal and then we're actually on their board agenda for that night to be adopted before they push us off. They allowed us to go that day because we needed the extra time, but yes, they'll do it. So they can make changes to our plan, yes.
But our primary emphasis on this is basically, I don't know the right terminology is renewal, but it's really a continuation of the existing millages that the Albion community is paying, that the Marshall community is paying. So without increasing millages that people are currently burdened with, just trying to keep it consistent, extend out the years to be able to provide enough dollars for us to make the improvements that percolate out of this process.
So those would just be renewals then?
We're not asking for an additional millage. We're gonna keep the millage the same in both voting,
Former district.
voting communities.
From the last meeting, you said there wasn't an increase for either city, we just keep paying what we've already been paying, there's no change, correct?
Right, and our expectation is we're gonna time it so that, after this one, which should get us through another chunk of time, remember, we passed the last one in 2010. It's 2019, so we almost made it 10 years, but we will by the time we get to 2020. With that 10-year time frame, we believe that the next bond should be able to get us through that next phase, and then we can start getting to the point where all the millages are resolved on all parties as far as the taxpayers of our district. And then when we go for the next one, it will be a new millage, and it will be a millage that everyone's gonna share equally across the board. Because we have to have that bridge, I believe we have to have that, but I hope you support it, but we have to have a bridge bond initiative to be able to get everybody equalized.
So Randy, there has been concerns about air conditioning, which I think you had mentioned last time, which
Yeah.
was something that they are evaluating. Do you know which buildings are the ones that still need air conditioning and what we're doing for the fall?
Yeah,
Because we do have,
If you allow me to be kind of
Yeah.
glib, our hotspots are Hughes Elementary, Harrington Elementary, and the second and third floor of A building right here that we're in right now. We had the assessment, we had some bids put out so we could take a look at what that would cost us and what infrastructure changes needed to happen. We found that the infrastructure was gonna be too insurmountable for us to deal with in a general budget. Adding air conditioning could be, if it's structurally, could be covered under sinking fund, but not be, if we're buying a particular unit, like window units, that becomes equipment. And so it doesn't get covered under sinking fund, it becomes covered under our general fund. What we did with that though is to make sure that we have cooling hubs or cooling areas in each of those those buildings to make sure that we're managing that well. Harrington has already purchased a couple window air conditioners to support some areas of common areas like the teacher's lounge and some other spots. But we're looking at renting industrial units that would come in and strategically be placed within these buildings to give them airflow and hopefully bring down the set point or the ambient temperature that people experience in the classroom. We're talking about 6 weeks of rental. One unit's gonna be a 5-ton unit, which both units, all the units that we're gonna look at have to be vented. And we have a plan for that. Brad has talked to them about any kind of upgrades. The 5-ton units need to have 220 capabilities for plug-in, and they had to have the capacity each of the buildings to do that. So we're figuring that's $600 roughly by the time we do those two areas. And then the smaller units, the 1.5-ton units, we're gonna place in areas like particular, a cooling hub would be the media center at the back of Hughes. Cooling center would be the cafeterias in both buildings. Cooling center would be the media center at Harrington. And there would be 2 other smaller units that would be available for deployment elsewhere. So we're looking at 2 5-tons and 6 1.5 tons.
so this is something that you see we're able to do even for this fall?
Yes, and if you, Brad actually brought this up in our meeting today, and Brad, if you want to expound on that, you can. Even putting air conditioning, which is a definite need, and making sure that we're consistent across all buildings so that we have equity and resources. To put that on the bond, it would not probably be available for the start of school next year. It would have to be into the fall by the time we got into getting those things repaired and getting those things established. So most likely, and the reason why I asked Brad to look into the rentals is because we need to have more flexibility and more responsiveness as a stopgap as we go through the process. There's also a heat guideline and the National Weather Service chart that we use in regards to making decisions to close school or either for half day or close school for a day if we know that we're into a heat spell where we know that the heat index is going to get to dangerous levels. So there's a number of things that we can be doing up to that point. We just want to make sure that if any classroom gets to 86 on the ambient temperature, we know that the humidity is going to be high because we have a whole lot of sweaty kids inside that classroom that's going to raise the humidity. So when it gets to 86, they have to start taking these steps that we suggested. Things like not using high heat items like Promethean boards and things like that in the classroom while they're teaching, plenty of water breaks, those kind of things. Take kids to cooling centers or rotate them through common areas that have air conditioning. And we'll continue to do that until we're better prepared. So mostly we have about 2/3 of our district with air and about 1/3 not, roughly, don't you think, Brad? Yeah.
So I'm guessing with Calhoun, the CISD area, everybody moving to the earlier start, we're not the only district going through this, so.
No.
How many?
Actually, across the state, we're not the only.
Okay, so, I mean, what, do you know, what is the percentage of the schools that already have air, any idea? I mean, we're not unique, I guess, is what it comes down to, so.
No, in fact, we're better than other locations.
Doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing anything, I'm just, we're all in the same spot, so
Yeah.
to speak, so.
And if you go to Jackson, there's still schools in Jackson that don't have air.
My kids don't have air in any of their buildings in Western School District. None of the buildings.
But we're taking steps to make sure that we're operational by the 19th on this. Thanks for asking that question.
Any other questions for Randy on the facility needs assessment update?
Oh, Randy,
Can you start over?
Huh?
Can you start back from the beginning?
No. See you. How you doing, Brad?
Good.
Good deal.
who is gonna be on the committee, to give input on and feedback? You
Well-
said that there was gonna be a committee to go over.
Yeah, we haven't decided who that is going to be yet, because we still have to go through this process with our building principals. Once we get that, we'll get a cross-section of folks that have been involved with our schools and, parents or community members, coaches, different folks like that that'll be on that. That committee is not for the pro vote of the bond. That committee is simply to give feedback, to take a look at our priorities, to help us set those priorities and that kind of stuff. Board members can be on that process as well, but you guys all have a voice as we go through this planning. When we do get to the point where Treasury approves us to go forward, there's gonna have to be a vote yes group, but that has to be independent from the schools. We can't go out and do that. You can go out personally and talk about it, but you can't represent the board or the school about it. So I'll have to be very even and transparent, as I always am, about these issues to make sure people know the yin and the yang and all the facts behind them. But if you guys want to go out individually and advocate, that's certainly your prerogative.
Are the teachers gonna be represented on that, or are they already like giving their input prior to?
Oh, yeah. Yes, they'll get input along the way. One of the key aspects of the bond is replacing all our old classroom furniture that hasn't been touched really as a large scale change for 20 years. And so we need to be able to do that and then talk about what needs to be in the classroom for 21st century learning. And that's going to have impact on technology, it's going to have impact on furniture and what kind of furniture we use and so forth.
So the first committee that we're talking about with deciding, do we have the restriction of no more than 3 board members on there?
Yes, if the board members, we can't do a quorum on that.
So at this point, it probably makes sense if you guys have an interest in serving on that, let me know. And then if we only have three, then obviously those three would go, but if we have more than three people that are interested, then I'll work with you guys to figure out which three to represent.
And every facility is gonna be on this bond.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Move on to B, MMS updates.
Marshall Middle School update. Tara's in the audience. Tara and I, actually, have you guys seen her since we assigned her? Congratulations, Tara. We were in a meeting the other day with Star Commonwealth talking about different initiatives around what used to be called the Hawk's Nest. It's no longer called the Hawk's Nest. That's why I didn't put it on the agenda, it's Hawk's Nest. Basically, we're taking a broader view of this about how do we help and support the dynamics of the middle school. In a perfect world, the dynamics of the middle school are as challenging as they always have been. And I think it's getting better, but there's a lot more things we can do. We talked a lot about, and Tara, I'll let you present whatever you want to present, okay? We knew that some of the issues with our previous program model last year was that students really felt like they were being isolated and that they were not afforded the opportunity to go out into general classroom settings as much as they would want. We know that negative behavior can feed on negative behavior, and it's hard for kids to get centered and stable to feel good about their choices to go off and do other things. We know that these kids need the opportunity to be invested in to make sure they have the opportunity to get into general classrooms, and they need the accountability and support to do so. So with that, we talked about changing this up. We need to be more fluid. We have to start from the position of gen ed population, that everybody is together in their general education environments. And then we find opportunities for students to continue to keep in that situation. And if any student, and it's any student, whether the student would normally end up in a in-school suspension room or the reset room, or it's a student that historically had come out of the Hawk's Nest, doesn't matter. If any student demonstrates that they can't maintain themselves in a productive way in a classroom, we're gonna have some interactions with them, pull them on the hallway for a discussion. Each of our teachers, primary teachers in this program, which is Joel and Leslie, both of them will have a split caseload of students that they know that they've been working with or who have requested that they continue to work with them. If students have issues, we bring them out in the hallway for an intervention, conversation, trying to de-escalate, trying to get them recentered. If they demonstrate they can't continue to be recentered, they're going to be escorted down to the, for lack of, do we have a name for it? Not really.
Yet.
Yeah.
We're working on it, but there's some really cool like sensory things to get reset.
Mindfulness.
It's going to be an opportunity for a classroom, for small group working on math, small group working on language arts. So, so the education that they might have been getting in one of the classrooms that they just were struggling in, they're going to be able to continue within just a smaller group.
So
Definitely more fluid, like Dr. Davis said. Then we had 24 kids last year, and we knew there were a lot of kids not being served. Some aspects worked, and we looked at that and took some of the things that were working and are trying something improved for sure.
So that, like the sixth grade, we didn't have a lot of capacity with sixth grade. So we've hired an additional sixth grade teacher to make sure class sizes are smaller. We have Joel and Leslie are gonna be there. Kyle from the reset room will be there, but from that perspective of sensory room, mindfulness, interventions to help de-escalate, have kids get an opportunity to regroup, demonstrate that they can be productive or they're committed to being productive, and then return them back into the classroom on their regular schedule as quick as possible, and continue to have that feedback. We're talking about getting a interventionist from Star Commonwealth that will be working with us at least 4 days a week, the entire day, school day, possibly 5. We're talking about getting more coaching and training in all of our classrooms at the middle school on mindfulness and things that we can do in the classroom that help mitigate tier 1 behaviors from becoming tier 2, and also more restorative practices. We're not talking about restorative justice here, we're talking about restorative practices. So strength-based talking, helping the student identify the areas that they're being challenged on and what they can do about that, those types of things that will go on. We're excited about the conversation we had. I got to sign a contract with Star to allow these services to come in and be a part of our milieu here in middle school. One thing's clear is where our teachers are not intended to be therapists. They aren't trained to do that. They're good listeners, they're good coaches, they're good teachers. They should be forming good, positive relationships with every kid that they serve. With that, that's going to go a long way. There are going to be times where students will have to be, by their behaviors and by their choices, have to be escorted down to another location to continue to get coaching until they can get regrouped. But we're real excited about it. The whole initiative is to keep kids in the general ed classrooms in their general schedules. And that's our primary objective, making sure that all kids have a safe, nurturing, and organized teaching and learning environment for themselves in the building. We think this approach is a little bit more inclusive, a little bit more appropriate for what we're trying to accomplish in teaching kids new skill sets in the middle school.
Does the Summit Point have any role in the board?
Yes, they do. Actually, they have a couple of our students have been referred and are having services from them, and they'll continue to do that. And Star will continue to do that as well. Then we have therapists on both sides. One's for commercial insurance and one's for Medicaid. So yes, that's going to be definitely a piece of that. This was our first pilot out with Summit Point, and it actually happened, and we had some successes with that. And I got to say, I don't want to leave the impression that Hawks Nest was not a decent effort. We had a number of students that were successful out of that initiative, and a couple kids that really just want that hour, step out of their normal schedule and routine to be able to regroup when they feel like there's pressure coming on them and they need just an opportunity to debrief and then turn around and move forward and be productive. So we think this will be a good model.
So it seemed like we had started it because we felt these kids weren't succeeding in the normal classroom and weren't making the progress, and that they needed more attention and you know, so a different student to teacher ratio, and that it was good to be able to go in the first thing in the morning and I don't remember what you guys called it, but kind of decompress and talk about your day before and get ready, and then at the end of the morning or beginning of the afternoon, something similar, talking about what worked and what didn't. And so how are we going to address those things? Are we going to end up where kids are back in an environment where they weren't succeeding and then taking out and getting the things they need then, or how do we see?
Well, we know every kid's an individual, and so we want to be able to address it on an individual need basis. However, we do know, like, we're starting every day with 20 minutes of advisory, and so Joel and Leslie will both have advisory groups made out of students who were either in the program last year or identified this year. And that, it will be just that. And then, okay, we're ready, it's kind of that heading up to move on. In this model, we're hoping that, as they identify themselves, maybe they're struggling, maybe it's a week that they're struggling, and they're spending more time with Joel and Leslie, but they can also be continuing their education. It's not a breakaway, it's a smaller group, they're getting needs met. Joel's working on gaps, in math. A lot of these kids are several grade levels below where they should be. And so they're gonna be doing things like that to address as needed. So, our intention is that he's still gonna have a 7th grade math class. And it might have a small group that's just working on skills, plus they're working on what content. So, there is still going to be the academic piece where they're addressing those gaps, the behavior needs, social needs, and there will be a chance every morning to connect with all of them, and then as the day progresses, each day might be a little bit different.
And the person we would get from Star at least 4 days a week, and possibly another person coming and filling in the 5th day. Their schedules work up to 5 o'clock, so they're going to be available in the afternoons to do home visits and connections to, rec department if we have something like that going on here in Marshall or over in Albion where the kids are engaged, just to make sure that there's fluidity between our school day and what goes on at least into the dinner hour.
Any other questions? Okay.
Good
Move
deal.
on. Thank you. We'll move on to C, 1 million safety grant update.
I'm going to let you speak if you want. If you came in that door, you'll see the new entrance over there. It's not glassed in yet, but that's coming. We're real pleased with that design. We don't think it interferes with foot traffic and the flow in the hallway. High school vestibules look good as far as their frame in and stuff like that. We're going to be utilizing either new or current existing standards that we've done all the way up till this point to start the year. And as these vestibules get solidified, we think by mid-September, everything would be finished. And we need to make sure that we get messaging out to the public that it's different when it goes different. People will be required to be carrying their identification when they come into the building during school hours. They'll go through the process, as you guys well know about the design. There will be a kiosk with a camera with high def capability, take a good shot of you, put it in the records along with your information. If somebody chooses to be a bad person after they get entrance into the building, we'll have record and information to share with the police and have quick response. We don't think that's going to happen, but you always have to be prepared for it. We also have our sensors, door sensors that we're working with Taryn and technology to make sure that that's all complete as well within this grant, so that anytime a door is left open over a certain threshold of time, and I haven't established what that threshold is yet, it lights up on a control panel in the office and gives us a warning that it's been left open beyond the threshold, and then we have to go down and make sure that's closed, and we investigate why that was left open like that. I think that's going to be huge for us until we all learn safe practices and we recognize that we shouldn't be propping doors open and you're just going to go to the car and come back. We need to make sure people are paying attention to what's going on all the way across the board. The filming of the windows has already been taken care of. Some of the framing was just, are they done with the framing now, the inserts?
The fastener,
Yeah.
they're finishing in Albion
there are some, there's a punch list, there's some windows here and there, Robert's got a few
Right.
that need to be caught up on, and actually, the one of the company was here last week, because his crews had moved on, but he was catching up on 3 or 4 windows at the high school, and then, so they're working their way through.
Good.
But they're over 90% of the way complete.
So tomorrow we have an owners meeting with King Scott and CSM to review the status of this project and where we're at. The big number is, or the big next steps are to make sure we start flowing invoices and evidence of payment and those kind of things to the state so they can start processing that. We have to have all of our invoices and all proof of payment by September 30th, Becky?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the target date for us to be able to get all the dollars that they've awarded us coming back. Very thankful for the Michigan State Police for that.
Absolutely.
And the legislature.
Wonder if we could reach out to John Hendler and try to get something, just talking about
Oh, absolutely. That's a good idea.
maybe for this week. So just kind of, this is what's going to be coming. Stay tuned, and then when the follow-up, emails go out to say it's starting in this building, they'll have a better idea about it.
Yeah. And we're going to start with administration and support staff, office support staff on how that all goes. There's still going to be an AP, basically a phone available or a voice available to state your business and that kind of stuff before your identification badge gets printed, before you're let inside the building. So there'll still be interaction that way as people buzz you in and buzz you out. So it's kind of like taking what we used to do and kicking it up a pretty significant notch.
We got that email from, I can't remember her name, in Albion too. Is that Ann?
About what?
That she's the new reporter over in Albion.
Yes.
You can reach out to her as well.
Yep.
Yeah, it would probably be good to let people know what's going on before they actually see it all, so that all those questions and theories and guesses on what's going on can kind of get a head start on that ahead
Yep.
of time.
We'll get something up very quickly.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll go to D, tennis court project completion.
In front of you, I handed out an update from Ryan Long of Elite Companies LLC. Most of you know Ryan. He basically grew up in our school system from 2010 to 2016, 15, 16. Ryan was the on-site general manager in charge of oversight of all the trades and so forth in our last bond initiative. He has since broken from CSM and has created his own company. It's a smaller scale company at this juncture, and he's not sure how big he wants to get, but we thought this was a perfect project to reach out to him for. It's really helpful to Brad and his department to make sure that we have someone that has this kind of expertise to be able to run through the whole process and get it done. I'm going to pass around some pictures of before and after. But if you look at the good stewardship of this facility, some of you might not know, but this was gifted to us by community members. A couple community members got together and decided they were going to build a tennis court. And back in that day, you were able to go out and fundraise yourself and get dollars together and say, okay, we have the dollars, and actually do the work. And then have licensing come in and tell you whether or not you passed muster or not. And there were little hiccups along the way when they did that, but they did a really, really good job. And so proud of that project. Well, the 6 major courts up front were in desperate need for repair. All of you have heard that. Dr. George Seifert was key in voicing that opinion in the board for some years. It took a long time to get a licensed contractor that does this work with tennis courts to actually call us back and agree to be on the schedule. Having Ryan there was helpful to make sure that got implemented. But when you look at it, they did a complete court fencing replacement. They did a complete removal of the old courts down to and including their sub base, which is one of the reasons why it was uneven and it was cracking and things like that. They did new crushed aggregate subbase installed. They thought they were gonna mill what was there.
Use the millings of the old court, but it wasn't appropriate.
Yeah, it was just kind of falling apart, didn't hold. New court grading, adjusting elevations to better assist with moving surface water to storm drainage inlets that we have around the outside of the courts. I'm thinking this is 3-foot cross section, including 1.5 foot, 100% limestone mixed top course to avoid any future bleeding, either by paint or rust. So it continues to hold and looks nice. Painting and resurfacing of the 6 new tennis courts. New concrete sidewalk separating the 4 southern tennis courts from the new 6 at the north, improving traffic flow quality and safety. If you've seen them before, go out and take a look at them now. I think you'll be really impressed with the project. I think the community is going to be very thankful for that.
When did the old ones built? Was it about 20 years ago?
It is.
It's been since I've been here, and I've only been here 15, so I can look it up.
Yeah.
Oh, I just
Could be
curious.
20.
I was just curious how long the other
Yeah.
ones had lasted.
I'll have to ask Pat McCann and others that involved themselves with that project. We're really I'm so pleased to have that project done, and thank you, Brad, for the hard work you put into that.
Thank you.
Really nice.
I know my daughter and Richard's son will say thank you too, because they're both on the team.
That's a thing you know that spot. You know that spot.
Yeah, there were some serious dead spots
just-
there.
There were some bad spots, yeah.
It's like you were playing with a beanbag.
Yeah.
It will.
Okay, any questions on that? Move on to public comments. Anyone can speak on any item. We ask people keep their comments to 3 minutes or less. See none. Board member comments for which no action may be taken at this meeting.
Can I mention something?
Yes.
You were.
No,
You said it first.
I just want to give you a heads up. I'll be communicating to you as a group about our communication planning. And don't respond as a group because that'll be a violation of Open Meetings Act, because I'm going to ask you to make a decision in that process. And then we'll go forward with that between now and we have a date that we're looking at that we want to talk about for a little more work session.
September 9th? Or later than that?
Pardon me?
September 9th? Or later than that?
Earlier than that.
Earlier. Okay.
Earlier than that. Okay, that's all I had to say.
Last chance. Going. Adjourned. Great, thank you, everybody.